I didn't ask the Lord before I got into this last relationship if this is what he wanted for my life. I definitely knew that I wanted to bring the Lord into that decision because it's huge in the way that you live your life. You're affected so much by it. People get triggered at that word, submission, is because they think that it will give them less freedom. And it's crazy because it actually gives you so much more freedom, especially if that guy is following after the Lord.
Do you like the idea of them, or do you like them for them?
Mm-hmm.
They haven't had time to allow God to pursue them before allowing someone else to pursue them.
Redefine the waiting season into more of an adventure season where you can have so much fun just pursuing the things that you've always wanted to.
Hi everyone, welcome to the Fearless Catholic Woman. I'm your host, Yingyee Herman, and our mission is to empower the modern day Catholic woman to live fearlessly in her God-given identity. Today, I'm sitting across from my friend Maria. Hi Maria, how are you?
Hello, doing so good. How are you, Yingyee?
I'm doing good. How was your day today?
It was good. It's a Friday, so I'm very pumped for the weekend because I am a little bit tired, but we had a good shoot in the studio, and I'm very excited and pumped to be on this podcast episode. So
I'm excited for you to come on too, and it's a fun topic. I've actually been getting some messages of people wanting to hear about dating.
really?
Yeah, so I was like, you know what? So I've been saving this topic for you. I just want to dive right into it because dating as a young Catholic woman, it can be hard as well.
Yes. And I'm sure, we both have experience with it. Obviously, you're married now, but yeah, I feel like the world is telling you so many things, like secular, like how to date, and those type of things. And I will say, I am only 22, so I don't have like all of the answers, but I can speak about my experiences and the things that I found to be helpful to hopefully help some of you guys who are listening to this episode. I feel like talking about dating, I would say it'd be important to kind of go back into my story and how I found the Lord, because I didn't date a lot in high school. I kind of had my first, I would say, official boyfriend in college, and although I was chasing the Lord throughout all of my life, He just led me a little bit deeper through each like stage in different ways, and definitely in dating, I would say. Because the first relationship that I had in college wasn't necessarily equally yoked, kind of terms that a lot of Christian Catholic people use to talk about dating, but I felt like my ex at the time, boyfriend at the time, wasn't really pursuing the Lord in the ways that I wanted to, and I didn't really think about those things going in. I was just like, oh my gosh, there's a guy who likes me and he asked me out and this is really exciting, but I wasn't so much thinking about what are the things that I want to look for in a future husband, because that is what I believe is the purpose of dating. And so kind of struggling through that, and I dated him for a while, but really realizing, okay, what are my priorities here? Is he putting the Lord as the number one thing in his life? And that's what I wanted to do. So even though I was striving to do that, it was kind of hard dating someone who wasn't in the faith like that.
Let's talk about that because I wanted to invite you on too, because you and we have contrast dating stories. I went through a line of unequally yoked men that kept causing me hurt, and I kept going back to them. But for you, you noticed right away after when you were dating, what were some of the things that you were looking for in a husband versus, oh, he's not the one.
It's funny because actually going back, I journal a lot. And so going back to some of my notes that I journaled when I was literally 16 years old, I think I must have been on a retreat or something where they encouraged us to write down our standards, basically, of what does a person that we want to date and later marry actually look like, and what are some of those characteristics. And so I found this list from when I was 16 years old of all these characteristics of the guy that I wanted to marry. And I found this later and just kind of like read through it, and I was like, wow, younger self really knew what she wanted. I was like, I should go back to that. It's so good. And I have a few different iterations. I feel like that list has just kept on developing as I've grown and matured. But writing down a list of the characteristics and like in your prayer, literally asking God, like, okay, what are the things that you want my future husband to have, to look like, and to be, and then just holding yourself accountable is the hardest part. I definitely, when I was in my first relationship in college, one of the things that helped me realize that it was an unequally yoked relationship was my friendships and my mentors who were like, yeah, like, I mean, not saying it flat out, but just kind of leading me into the knowledge that the Lord wants more for me. And I feel like that was huge.
What did they mean that the Lord wanted more for you?
I think they just saw that I wasn't living as fully or as freely as I could. Maybe if you were in a relationship that you feel like you can't be either fully yourself or you feel like there's just more for you, then I mean, if it depends on the person that you're dating and your situation, obviously, but in that situation for me, it was a situation where I should get out of that and then pursue the Lord fully, and let Him lead me into my next relationship.
Yeah, I think it's also so hard as well because if you are on fire for God and you're dating someone that's Catholic but doesn't practice the Catholic faith, that's also hard because it's also, I love how you said like you want to pursue the Lord as well, and if he's not pursuing the Lord with you, how are you guys going to grow in your faith together? And then there's the second type of Catholic who's lukewarm, who's hot and cold, so it will make you lukewarm as well. I mean, with surrounding yourself in that atmosphere. And then there's the third Catholic who's on fire for God. And have you kind of dated, from speaking, hearing about your first two relationships, have you kind of dated like the first two types of Catholics?
The first two. So the first one,
they're lukewarm, they're hot and cold, they're not as on fire for God.
yeah, no, I have not had the experience of dating a Catholic like that. Like I said, only really had two relationships. So the first one, not Catholic at all. And then Nico, who I'm dating now, is obviously on fire for his faith if you met him. And so I haven't really had that in-between experience. So I feel like I can't speak too much to that. But the principles are probably the same. Like, is the Lord leading you into growing with this person, or is he leading you to step back for a little bit and say, no, I need to prioritize the Lord, and I see that we're not really doing that in the same way.
I had the experience of, I mean, I wasn't really practicing when I was dating, but if someone didn't go to church, I would kind of fall into that area of, oh, if they're not going to church, no one's pushing me, then I don't need to go too.
Yeah.
Because, like, I feel like some women, they settle for, what's that word?
Like lukewarmness or just something below what they're called to be.
Yeah, and if I were to look at the past me or some of my friends now, when we settle because we don't know our roots in God. And for example, I learned that God is someone who loves to spoil us, and he speaks to us with kindness and patience and in love. And when we don't have our identity rooted in that, or we don't have a relationship with God to begin with, then we kind of just fall because we're like, oh, this person says they love me and they want me, and I think they will change because they come back every single time. So I feel like with dating, if we don't know our Father, then we're not going to seek the love that we actually want.
100%. Yeah, I'm thinking of this picture. I don't know if you've seen it before, but it's basically this little girl hugging onto a teddy bear super tight, and she doesn't want to give it up. And that in this picture kind of represents those guys that won't treat us well or won't treat us with the Father's love because they don't even know it. And then there's Jesus, and he's like inviting the little girl to come closer to her. But what she doesn't see is that he has this ginormous teddy bear behind his back. And it's like if the little girl would just trust him and take that step forward towards him, then he's gonna give her this bear. And it's like even bigger than the one that she's holding, and even better. And so I think that that's a really good way to view dating in Catholic relationships, because it's like, yeah, you have to take that first step towards Jesus, and then he's going to give you so much more than you could have ever hoped or dreamed for. Like, even more that's on your list of standards or characteristics that you'd want to find in a partner.
And I think sometimes it's so hard for us to just give that up because, for example, if we're in a relationship and someone is kind of a bit toxic, but they're just kind of always like, I love you, but their actions don't show, it's like I just think about how the Father always picks us up too, and with that teddy bear, he has something bigger for us, and we have to trust him in that. A good friend of mine said, God is your biggest pursuer, and that always stuck with me. If people know how much God pursues you, you wouldn't settle for the bare minimum from any man. It's such a blessing that you knew this isn't the type of guy I want to be with or I want to date in high school. And did it just come back down to your faith?
Yeah, I mean, I was kind of talking about my community around me was like super impactful for the decisions that I made. I didn't want to give up this relationship that was unhealthy for me. So those friends that kind of pushed me towards the Lord and just keep on growing in friendship with him, I feel like it was a super impactful Lent, actually, that I gave up basically sleeping in the same room with my boyfriend or whatever. And
was this in high school?
This was in college.
In college?
Yeah.
Is this with Nico?
No.
Oh, it was a different.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. So I actually wouldn't say that I really had a real relationship until college.
Okay.
So it's like the first one was in college, and then the second one, which is the current one, which is with Nico now. But yeah, I gave up that in Lent, and then that's actually what ended up having my first boyfriend break up with me. He's like, all right, we just kind of stripped everything away. I was like, yeah, this is how I want to live. And actually being firm in my boundaries was super helpful in just realizing what the relationship actually was. Yeah, just helped me move forward, and then I was able to lean on those friends who encouraged me to make that decision. And it was really hard, but I'm so grateful that that happened and that I was able to move past that.
Could you share, if you are willing, to the dynamics for listeners to get a picture of that first relationship? Because it'd be nice to like contrast to the relationship you have now, but just kind of to see that dynamic play out and how the Lord has been weaving your love story. That would be great for the listeners. What was that like?
I feel like the dynamic of the first relationship was, I was still chasing the Lord and going to Bible study and hanging out at Newman and stuff, but with my ex not really being a part of those spheres of my life per se, we would still go to mass together every once in a while or things like that, but it was never me being led in the faith. And I know that that was something really important to me that I just kind of brushed aside. I was like, no, this feels really good right now, so I'm just gonna kind of stay where I am. And we got along well with our likes and interests and things like that, but if you don't have the core faith, then you aren't going to be able to be led. And so I feel like that's the biggest switch in my relationship now. I'm just able to be so content, and my boyfriend now will take me to mass and we'll prioritize Bible study together and pray. Like, we pray every night, and things like that, which ultimately leads to just much more joy and inner peace in this relationship that I have now, because I can be content that we are growing together and that we're wanting to go to heaven, to the same place together, and that we're going to lead each other there. And so I think that has been the biggest game changer differences that I've noticed. Whereas in my first relationship, there was more unease, like, all right, these things feel good right now, but where are we actually headed? Could this lead to a marriage? Like, I didn't really feel as confident as I do now in my relationship.
Thank you for explaining that. You said something that I think a lot of women struggle with. Some of them struggle with in their dating life is that they just want to, they're happy, so they want to stay there. And sometimes when it's like a soul tie, sometimes when we are in a place where we're kind of like, I think God wants me to move on, but I'm happy. And I think deep down it's because we put ourselves there because we think like, who else would love us as much as this person right now? Right. And that does come in a place where I was talking about like settling, because we don't think that someone else there would love us for us, especially if it's our first relationships as well. So what was the thought process for you to just dig into a little bit deeper of, I'm happy where I'm at, even though you felt like God was saying, I want you to step out of this relationship?
I mean, honestly, I don't think there was too much thought behind it, and maybe that was what was keeping me there, because I was just comfortable in this place that we were doing fun things and hanging out with friends and just kind of living college, but maybe not necessarily thinking about, okay, where's this going later? Or where is this headed? So I feel like it was actually the lack of thought that kind of kept me in that place, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that does make sense. But also, you're in college, and the media today actually is just like, you should hook up with people. Dating is just date for fun. You're young, don't get married yet. Just explore as many men out there as you want, and then you can focus on getting married when you're older. First of all, did you have an environment of hookup culture there, or surrounded by people who were doing that?
I was surrounded by, my household was all like Catholic women seeking the Lord, like we did Bible studies together and stuff. So I feel like I wasn't in the hookup culture as much as, obviously it was around on a college campus, but I didn't really find myself around too many people like that. I feel like the struggle was more in just little ways. Like, our boyfriends can sleep over and that's fine. There wasn't really maybe so harsh of a line, especially since like you're away from your parents for the first time. You get to make all these decisions and choose like, okay, what are my boundaries actually going to be? And I'd say, yeah, boundaries is a good word to talk about, because that was really hard. Just like figuring out what feels right for me versus like what I should actually be doing. I think in the back of my mind I always knew what I should be doing, but being in a house where it was just kind of the norm to have guys sleep over, not any guy but our boyfriends and stuff, was definitely an environment that was probably not the best for choosing the right decision and making boundaries to stop doing that.
Why did you guys decide for Lent that that was something that you should do, is sleep separately or have them not come over?
So that was just a decision that I decided to do, and I don't know exactly why. I think it was definitely just grace that allowed me to do that. I just knew probably deep down that this wasn't heading in a good direction, even if I couldn't say that or want to admit that. But I was like, okay, this is something tangible that I can do that I know is right, and hopefully it will lead me to a better place. So I feel like I just kind of decided to do that just to see like I mean, I don't want to treat Lent like an experiment, but I thought that that would be one way that I could grow closer to God in that time. And yeah, I just thought, okay, let's do it. Let's just take this next step. And it ended up being so fruitful.
I think God was really calling you to do that because you said after you decided to put that boundary up or tell him this is what I want to do for Lent, he broke up with you because
Yeah.
he was mad that you were putting that up.
I mean, I think it was probably a realization on his part that, oh, she's really actually serious about her faith and about these things. And I don't know exactly what was going through his head, but maybe it was like, I'm not good enough, like, I'm never going to be good enough type of a thing, which is really hard. But yeah, it was just that core difference in what we wanted to live our life for. So it was actually a very, I would say, mature conversation and breakup, and it was really hard. But just the realization that we were going two separate ways, I think, was the main piece that kind of drove that breakup.
I think that was a good turning point and experience because you were just like, how do I want to date, and how do I want someone to come and pursue me in a different way, because you learned what you wanted then.
Yeah.
Which is, it would be nice if someone were to come to Mass with you and read the Bible with you. As someone who is growing in their faith and wanting to know the Lord more, like you said earlier, it's important that your partner is doing it with you, especially being led. What do you mean by being led?
If you reflect, like, Mary and Joseph's relationship, for example, or Saints Louis and Zaylee, I don't know, just thinking about, like, what it means to be a Christian couple. I don't necessarily have the words for it, but the role of a man and a role of the woman, it's unique, and it's that we're complementary, but we're not equal. And so the man is supposed to protect and lead and guide, and the woman is supposed to nurture, and it shows in our bodies, and it's very beautiful. And I think just knowing those things and, like, learning about them, for example, JP2's Theology of the Body, and you can get super nerdy and read the Catholic documents about it and stuff, but also just looking at those real life examples of the saints and holy couples, of the woman just trusting the man so much that the man would give his life for her, and that is the way that it should be, and we just get to submit, which is pretty sick, honestly. We don't really have to worry about too much, which is amazing, but also still being able to be independent and just awesome, fearless women, like the podcast title says. So I don't know if that really gives an answer, but those are some things that I think, yeah, a good holy relationship should look like, is the woman should be able to just be led and not have to worry about those things too much, which is great.
The modern day world would just say, oh, submitting to a man, or they do the independent woman thing and don't listen to a man. You don't have to.
Yeah.
Which I agree to an extent, right? And I think this is where people have a bad view of religion, because the church teaches that a woman should submit. But then for women who have never had a man role, like a role of a father figure or a healthy relationship or a partner, they hear that word and it triggers them about what submission means. And I would say I was very independent too. I like making my own decisions until God made the decisions for me. And what I've learned in a equally yoked relationship, especially a woman seeking the Lord, is that if we submit to God, I would trust that my husband submits to God and my husband can hear God's voice. And my husband and I actually talk about it, is where I'm like, he is the general and I'm his right hand. Like, he isn't just making the decisions for me. he gives me freedom and independency to make my own decisions, yes, but when it comes to big decisions about our family, he hears something, he thinks of something, and he's always coming to me for advice because we're the heart for our husbands. And I think people get it mixed up that women don't have the decision. And especially dating, if you're dating to marry, you're supposed to see if this man is submissive to the father, because if he's submissive to the father, then the father would not tell him to harm you or to do anything.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. I love that direction and looking at it like that. And another thing that I think is a common misconception, or like why people get triggered at that word, submission, is because they think that it will give them less freedom. And it's crazy because it actually gives you so much more freedom, especially if that guy is following after the Lord. Yeah, I just think of like why God gave us his 10 commandments, and it wasn't to give us less freedom. It might look like a list of rules if you don't see the heart behind it, but the reason why he gave us those is so that we can live more freely, because he knows how we work. And so it's just like the same in a relationship, because he designed us, and that's how he designed us as women, is to be able to be led and be pursued. And that's just so beautiful. And if you're able to enter into it and embrace it, then it actually unlocks a whole new freedom that you couldn't have if you were just trying to chase after all these things on your own. You just have to sit and receive. And then, I mean, obviously I love how you described your relationship being the right hand woman or man or whatever. Yeah, and what you said about being the heart, because obviously you two should be talking and come to decisions together, but just be able to trust your boyfriend or husband to lead you to those right things is very beautiful.
Yes, I agree with that. From my experience with my husband, we were dating and I wasn't practicing. At the time, he wasn't really practicing. I mean, he didn't believe in God yet. And so, what you said about freedom, though, is when I started submitting to God and I started taking my faith seriously, and then he came around and started taking his faith seriously and submitting, there is actually so much more freedom now, because it's not just you and your partner now, it's God is in the center. And I think the difference between freedom, like the submission of what makes you feel free, is that you are putting God in the center of your relationship, versus if you were to just submit to this man without God, it would be really toxic.
Yeah.
And because he doesn't have, his heart isn't softened to God yet, where he is using like Bible as a backup, saying woman should submit, and then he doesn't read the other part saying husbands, lay your life down for woman, for your wife, because he only sees that. But when there's a godly man for you, he will see those two parts and he will say, I'm not the one that's leading this, Christ is leading this. And I think sometimes, like, we hear about hookup culture, for example, or just date who you want, date this, and we get hurt because we aren't seeing the red flags, or sometimes they call it the beige flag. We don't see it of this person is Catholic, I should be with him because he's Catholic, but is his heart ready to submit under God first? And we don't see that, so we're blinded by that label, but not their hearts.
That's huge. A word that comes to mind when you're talking, I love like what you're saying about heart posture and stuff, but humility, that was definitely on the top of my list of things that I wanted to find in a husband, because humility is recognizing who you are before God. And if a man doesn't have humility, it's going to be really hard for him to be able to submit to God. And it's going to be hard, therefore, to be led by a man who isn't humble. So yeah, I feel
Right.
like that was huge.
Something that my mom said to me recently, she was just so vulnerable. And she was just like, as a woman being led, she was like, your father lost his faith, and I lost my faith.
Mm-hmm.
Because the man, the figure, the men are supposed to lead, and it's like, you guys are the shepherds, and as women we can lead, but we also have like that toll of emotional toll, mental toll, being the manager of the house sometimes, and everything, where men don't think about the little things, if that makes sense. Where we do that, it's a big burden on us. So if they look at the big picture and just lead, we will follow. We will. I always say, like, to wrap up that topic of submission, I was praying to God, and I was like, God, I'm having a hard time submitting. And if you are having a hard time to submit to, I would say take it to God. And I remember I was in my secret place, and I was like, Father, why as women do we have to submit? Because for the longest time, I've led myself. Yeah. I've been independent. Why do I need a man to lead me when I just have you? And he was like, Yingyee, why are you ashamed of being a woman? And I'm like, because I hate it. Like, society expects us to just follow and follow. What if I disagree with my partner? And God was like, but you should be so proud, because without woman, with Mary is the standard of submission. She said yes to me, and she followed Joseph to safety, and you replicate that. And then he also said that, he told me, and he was like, women have a gift that men don't. And that gift is that you can hear my voice so clearly. Men can't hear God's voice as clear as women. They can't feel my heart. And so you being a partner with a man, you're not submitting to it, but you're the heart to this man that can't feel my heart, and that can't hear my heart. And that really changed my perspective of, I'm the heart for my husband. And if he needs, that's why I'm his right hand, because if he needs to talk about things, then he's going to come to me, and I can hear and feel God's heart for situations that my husband can't. Because their brain just is so logical that they don't feel, or they can't feel his heart emotionally. I mean, this is not saying all men don't hear God's voice, but the majority of them are just so logical.
That makes sense. And I feel like for different relationships and stuff, it's probably different. I mean, in my current relationship with Nico, I feel like he can hear the Lord's voice insanely well. I'm like, I don't know how I would stack up, but it's not about comparison. But yeah, I don't know exactly how the dynamic is with us, but I feel like it is a little bit different in that, yeah, I would just have to ask the Lord, like, yeah, what does this submission mean, as you so beautifully did? Because I feel like it might be a little bit different. Like, I might be a little bit more logical, and that's totally cool too. And he might have more of that heart. So it's so interesting in like the different, relationship dynamics. And obviously the Lord made us each so unique.
What I like is because we are so different, where you have a willingness to submit, and for the longest time for me, I had the hardest time to submit, because I didn't know what that meant.
Yeah.
And for me, it just was a really bad word, until I was like, wait, I'm the heart for my husband, who is super logical, who is kind of similar to you in this situation, who he can't really hear God yet, and he has trouble feeling God's voice, where I'm supposed to show him God in that sense. Like you said, there may be women listening who are more logical, or women who are struggling with submission, but there's different perspectives right now. of dating and stuff. We went a little off topic, but let's go back to when you were deciding this is not who I want to date. Now I kind of know my values. Could you explain what you're seeking in a man at that time after that experience?
Yeah. I mean, in that time, I feel like it was more about the realization of I didn't ask the Lord before I got into this last relationship if this is what he wanted for my life. And so going into my next relationship, I definitely knew that I wanted to bring the Lord into that decision because it's huge in the way that you live your life, and you're affected so much by it. So my eyes were opened into discerning that with the Lord instead of just making that decision on my own. And I knew that I wanted a few different characteristics. I knew that I wanted a man who was very humble. I knew that I wanted a man who was very good at self-gift, just giving to others and just being like having a servant's heart, basically. And those two things were so important to me, and just like gentleness. And so I kind of knew that those were like the top things that I was looking for, and that I wanted to bring the Lord into it. But then I was just kind of like hands open. I didn't date for like over a year, just to heal from that past relationship and just kind of grow in my relationship with God, and also just how I viewed relationships. Like I wanted to see men as brothers in Christ first before I just looked around and I was like, oh, is he a potential husband? Oh, is he a potential husband? No, I needed to be healed from that mindset. So yeah, I feel like that was kind of my mindset throughout that time.
I want to talk about that mindset because on TikTok there was Seek. Yeah. And people were like, oh, looking for my potential husband at Seek, or my wife at Seek. And someone I saw a TikTok, they were making fun of it, but they were like, all these people, I'm on the airplane alone. I didn't find a wife. I didn't find a husband. And let's talk about that, because that in itself it kind of dilutes what we're looking for in a partner.
Yeah, because it's like, guys, why are we going to seek? It's to seek the Lord. And on that journey, you will find where you're made to go. Like, you will find your vocation through that. And so if you're just trying to, seek people for an end to please yourself, that's not honoring to God, and that's not dignifying to other people. So it's really like, it's a process to get there, to be like, no, you are God's child, and I just want to love you because of that fact. I don't want to get anything out of it. And that's something that I have to work on every single day, and just like think about, am I using this person, or am I actually loving them? Which that means you're not worrying about what you can get out of it.
I went to this quote. It's, do you like the idea of them, or do you like them for them? Because the idea is, we're going to get married, we're going to go to church together, we're going to be this godly couple. But liking them for them is accepting them with their brokenness and saying, you are human, and we're going to see how God is going to help and mend you. And I think a lot of times when people are like, I had to get out of that mindset too. When I went to conferences, like, oh, who am I going to find a boyfriend there? What's going to happen? It's because I like the idea of being in a relationship. But I didn't like, and I didn't think about in detail of, oh, Lord, when I'm finding some trigger points they have, or if they're dealing with certain situations in a certain way, do I like that? Am I going to stick with them and help them through that? And dating is like, you get to find out their trigger points. You're going to find out what their traumas are and what makes them happy, what makes them sad. And it's like, can I do that for the rest of my life? Walk with them and say I do at the aisle. It's really hard. So then you prayed. And from what you're saying, I really like that you discerned with God about your partner this time. and saying, God, this is who I want. Because sometimes we get ahead of ourselves and we don't include God into our relationships, and God wants to be a part of that. And I like that you were working on yourself with God and learning about who you are in God before diving into your next relationship. I see sometimes some of my friends diving into other relationships a month in, and they haven't had time to allow God to pursue them before allowing someone else to pursue them. So how did you meet your current boyfriend, and what made you realize you're like, oh, this is kind of what God is setting me up for? Or
it's really funny the way that we met, because I mean, with the Encounter School coming to Madison and my mom being the campus director, I was obviously hanging around the leadership team and before, when it was called Road to Emmaus. And so Nico and I were around each other, but we weren't really talking or anything like that until last summer. There was the big Encounter conference in Ohio, and my family had an Airbnb there because we were going to go as a family, and we had like one extra bed, which Nico happened to be looking for a place to stay.
And he's the worship leader.
And he's the worship leader at the Madison campus. So I got to meet him there and just like have more conversations. We had a lot of similar interests in music and sound production and that sort of thing. And so my mom was always trying to get us to talk like about audio stuff basically. And so we met to talk about that stuff after kind of the initial meeting at the conference. And just he asked me out on a date. Well, he asked my parents if he could ask me out on a date first, which is like huge, just in that kind of strange situation of him being on the leadership team with my mom. But I was like, yeah, I'll go on a date with you. And I feel like a lot of people, Catholic women, struggle with just allowing themselves to maybe go on the first date because they're like, no, I need to discern this completely beforehand. And is he the one? Like thinking about the whole picture before you guys have even gone on a date. So I saw that first date as part of the discernment process, and just continually asking the Lord, like, is this guy the one that you've called me to date right now in my life? And just kind of slowly walking into that. And yeah, that's the story of us meeting and how we kind of kept that discernment open with the Lord.
You bring up a good point. It's Catholic women are quick to say it's the end game. Like, is this my husband? And going back to the husband mindset of, Lord, help me find my husband here. Yeah. But we get ahead of ourselves, and you said, no, my first date is that discernment process.
Yeah. Yeah, it's just like starting the process. The first couple of dates are really getting to know that person more. It's not like you can decide, like, yeah, this person is right for me before you have a couple of conversations. I don't know. So that's kind of how I saw that, and just keep on discerning and like seeing what fruit the relationship is bearing, and kind of taking it from there is how I ended up
in a relationship. So how is what's the difference from your first relationship where it was more lukewarm versus this relationship where you're dating someone who's on fire for God?
I would say the first relationship was probably more stagnant, kind of just doing things that we like to do, not too much growth. But in this relationship, I find myself constantly being pushed and pulled and grown. It's not stagnant, but it's with the Lord, and so there's like lots of joys in that. But also it's hard. It's just real. I don't know how to describe. I just feel like every day there's like a new opportunity to love, and I feel like we're both calling each other higher in different aspects. And so I think that those are good signs that we're heading in the right direction.
How has this relationship called you higher?
Yeah, that's a great question. I feel like when you do life closely with another person who is chasing after God's heart, there's going to be some honest conversations, and like you were saying before, like certain traumas and stuff that you realize that each other have had, and then just being able to love each other through that and just be who you are, just be completely honest, is just something very beautiful that I feel like I've been able to experience, just like being seen not by another human but through God, through this other person. And so I just feel like that's very healing, and being able to walk through those different things on a day-to-day basis is just a really good sign of that.
That's really beautifully said. It's being seen through God by this person. I kind of see from my experience too, is if you're not dating someone, I now understand from being in an unequally yoked relationship to the desiring and yearning to be in an equally yoked relationship to being in an equally yoked relationship. I've been whole spectrum. Yeah, but it's that when you are fighting, you can really start seeing each other as the enemy, and you can really stop having grace for the other person. You get blindness by the redness and the anger, and there are chances for the enemy to start saying lies about your relationship or about yourself or about your partner, that you start becoming resent them, and then you start making assumptions without even talking to them. But now the difference is, in a godly relationship, you are pushing and pulling each other to continue to see each other through God's eyes and God's love. And you can start seeing it's just a very different, beautiful way of now seeking the Lord together through the eyes of the Lord for each other.
Yeah, because I mean, before, if I would have been super honest about where I'm at, for example, in my other relationship, I wouldn't have been able to be seen like that, and I wouldn't have been able to heal through those things if it was without God. Because each one of us is so broken as humans, we're not going to be able to pull each other up to the next level. We're not going to be able to love each other when wounds at us are being poked at the same time as our partner is going through them. But we're only able to do that through God's love. And so I think that's just huge. Like, you're able to, if you find yourself being able to heal through a relationship like that, it is from the Lord, and that is a fruit that you can tell that's from Him.
Yeah, and it's something that's really hard in a relationship. It's like, without having God in the center, is forgiveness and pursuing to forgive and give grace to each other. That's really hard because we're all broken and we're all seeking the Lord together. Something that I've come to realize as well is that when you're in a relationship, I don't know, it came to my mind one day when I was like praying that God loves us so much, and He cannot be here physically to hold us or to speak love to us, just like our partner next to us. And so He will send someone to come and be that replacement for God. When we see that it's not just a person we're dating, but it's God's love in physical form for us, it changes the mindset about dating so much.
Wow, I have not thought about it like that, but that's beautiful.
Yeah, and I think it comes down to, is this partner, even though he messes up, does he show the characteristics of God, just like how God would if he's right here, right now? From your experience, you've seen the contrast between Nico and your ex, showing that, and also just like chasing the Lord and making you chase the Lord too. What a great motivation.
Yeah, totally.
How have you guys grown as a couple now?
See, we've been dating for like 7 months or something like that. And since the beginning of our relationship, a lot has changed just in the physical. I've graduated from college and started a full-time job. and he's switched jobs and moved. So there's just like a lot going on right now in this, I guess, season of transition. But I feel like a lot of it is just getting to know each other, getting to know our families, just kind of the basic relationship stuff. But then, as I mentioned earlier in the episode, we do pray together every night, and I feel like that's huge in just asking the other person, oh, like, what can I be praying for you today? Or what are you, like, it just basically opens the conversation of what are you struggling with right now, which is huge, just like walking with each other in those everyday struggles. I feel like we just keep on getting closer, not only to each other, but to the Lord. And so I can see a change in myself from the beginning of the relationship to now, in that I've grown in conversation with the Lord just because I'm like, oh yeah, I need to be praying for this guy. So I feel like that's a way that I've changed. And just being back around Madison has been awesome. Being able to go to Encounter every other week and hang out with you guys there. And I mean, like the other week when we went to the Elevation Worship concert and just hanging out with a really cool like community of young adults together has been super fun and fulfilling. And so that's a really awesome part that has changed since we're now both in Madison. So that's really fun.
And what would you say to women who are in relationships that they feel a pull from God to say, I have someone else for you, but they were in your situation where they're just content? This is just to clarify, if you're content in your relationship, that's not a bad thing, but this is a situation where this man isn't chasing after the Lord.
Like you
yes.
are. Yeah, I would say that you should find someone maybe in a relationship that you think is awesome and super on fire for the Lord, and you should maybe talk to that person and just be honest. Like, find someone that you can confide in and be like, this is where I'm at, and it's really hard, but can you hold me accountable to this? Literally just one person makes all the difference, of someone that you're comfortable with, that is on fire for the Lord and wants your good, and then just being able to be pulled up to the next step, because it's impossible to do it on your own.
What is the biggest lesson that you have learned from coming out of your old relationship to now being in a relationship where you have found yourself changed and more on fire for God too? What's the biggest lesson you've learned?
The biggest lesson, I've sort of touched on it, but it has to do with that big word, discernment. Sometimes people get really thrown off by this word. I mean, I definitely do sometimes, and just try to discern, okay, what are you trying to do in my life right now, God? And like being so scared to take a next step, because it's like, oh, is this the Lord's will for me? Oh, is this like good? Is this where God is calling me to do? I would just encourage you to bring the Lord into your decisions. He gave you free will, and he lets you choose, and you can tell if something is good based on the fruits of it. But just kind of reflecting on that discernment and bringing God into your decisions, even if you're currently steering the ship, just kind of slowly over time continue to ask God, like, what is it you want me to do with my life, and slowly give over the wheel and the control to him. It might take years and years. I mean, we're never perfect or completed, but just kind of like taking that in a small step and just asking him, bringing him into your decisions, is the advice that I would give.
That is great discernment. And sometimes it is a scary word, because it's like, how do I know how to discern God's will? And I would say discernment is just opening up and allowing God to shepherd you, because Jesus says so himself, that he's our shepherd. And so if we are confused about a relationship or something, we could just say, Jesus, show me and help me. Have you seen, have you heard of the removal prayer?
I have not.
So the removal prayer is you just ask God, remove anyone in my life that's not meant for me. And within a span, like I've done it, within a span of 72 hours, I just found stuff out about my friendships in college that just I cut ties with because it was toxic and I didn't know things were going behind my back.
Yeah.
And so if you're even feeling iffy about a partner, you could just say, Jesus, remove or show me anything that this person is supposed to not be in my life. And God will literally work so fast for you because he cares so much for you.
That is amazing. I got like so much peace when you said that. I'm definitely gonna be praying that.
Yes, you should.
That sounds amazing.
Yeah, and it's awesome. But the thing is, because God is seeing what you're going through. If you're in a relationship where you're crying almost all the time, where you're not feeling seen, you're not feeling heard, you're not feeling loved by this person that you're dating, you just say, Jesus, show me something or remove this person from my life if it's not meant for me. And Jesus is like, I've been waiting for this. And he will do it because he doesn't want to see you hurt. And just kind of going back to the image too of the little girl holding the teddy bear and Jesus has something bigger. He's probably like, I'm so excited that you're finally surrendering this teddy bear to me.
Yeah. You gotta remove the small teddy bear before you get the big teddy bear.
Yes,
yeah. Basically the message there.
Yeah. Yep, gotta remove this relationship that's not serving you. And really from hearing what you've been saying and your story so far and the lessons about dating, it's kind of just like sometimes we think of dating as, like we said earlier, the end game. But it's not. It's about our sanctification too. And it's about who in our life is going to pull us towards Jesus. Because even though we're two, we are still individuals. And who is going to pull us individually closer to God. And so it's awesome to hear that you've entered in this relationship where this man is on fire for God and he has a heart to serve others selflessly, and he's so humble and so full of humility that it is making you also chasing those characteristics too.
Yeah, and I guess that's another piece of advice that I would add on to what I was saying earlier is if you don't have a list or if you haven't brainstormed with God the things that you want in your future husband, that's a very easy first step to be like, yeah, this is actually what I want and need in my life. And then you just get to wait for that gift that God is going to give you.
Yes, it's going to challenge you too, even this list, because I feel like when you brainstorm with God is kind of saying, this is what I want you to work on too. And I'm going to bring someone in your life so that it challenges you to work on more patience or something like that.
Yeah, because then you also have to think about the other side of like, okay, what would this kind of guy be wanting in a woman? It's like, all right, that gives me some things to work on too. So it's not just a passive waiting, like you said, like thinking about the things that guy would want, and the Lord is calling you higher. You can also work on those things in the season. So
I would just tell someone who's listening to this, who's in the waiting season of their life, is that God is just working on them as much as God is working on you. And kind of in your situation as well, where God was working on you in the same season, God was working on your partner right now too.
And I would just like to redefine that as less of a waiting season. I feel like calling it a waiting season just makes it hard. Like nobody wants to wait. And I definitely wasn't viewing the time in between as a waiting season, and I think that was really helpful for me in just like pursuing the things that I'd always wanted to do but had never done. And so I guess that's another encouragement I would have, is to just, what are the things that you want to do, and then go out and do them. You're single, you can do it. Like, some of the things that I was able to do, I got really into running and ran my first half marathon and then full marathon and was just grinding on the running. And then studying abroad was also something that I'd wanted to do, but being in a relationship basically deterred me from wanting to do that, because I was like, oh, I don't want to have to leave my boyfriend and go across the world for this long, if that just sounded hard. But just kind of like digging into those things that you've always wanted to do, I feel like is a great way to redefine the waiting season into more of an adventure season where you can have so much fun just pursuing the things that you've always wanted to.
I like that redefinition of it, because it's also, you're not doing it alone, but God is with you, and it's, you're spending time with God. Just rethinking about that of I'm alone versus God is with me and we're doing fun things together,
Right.
makes it more fun. And
Totally.
if you're in the waiting season, I like to say that someone else is probably waiting for you. So don't be sad about that. They're just as much waiting for you as you're waiting for them. It's also just like the rib, like, as women, we have our husband's ribs. They're gonna find us eventually.
They have to, right?
Yeah, that's God did that. Wow, that is a great way to just kind of come to a close to this podcast episode. What would be the last thing you'd like to say about dating or anything like that?
The last thing that I want to say, I feel like we talked about a lot of different things. We talked about discernment and boundaries and a lot of, just like kind of those hot button topics. I don't know if I have too much more to add, except for a word of encouragement to anyone who's listening right now, who finds themselves in a situation like we've been talking about, where they feel like their partner is not seeking the Lord. I just want to pray confidence over you and courage, and just know that the Lord has some very amazing things in store for you, more than you can even imagine right now. Just go and take the Lord by the hand and let him give you that bigger teddy bear, because you are so worth it and you deserve everything.
Oh, so sweet. Thank you, Maria.
Yeah.
So I started this new tradition on our podcast for I pray for my guests, kind of just a word of knowledge or anything. And if it doesn't resonate with you, you can just shake it off, okay? But this is what I received for you when I prayed earlier about something. So I saw an image of doors closing and new doors opening in your life. And these doors are doors of friendship. And God wants you to know that even though it's hard to close certain friendships or you're in the process of closing them, just know that he's lined up new friendships for you and a new community for you. He's walked through these new doors already, and the next people who walk into your life are assigned by God to walk with you in all seasons of your life from now on.
Oh my goodness, baby. That's crazy. That hits so much for me. And what we were talking about before with the removal prayer, I feel like goes along really well with that word. And that gave me a lot of peace.
Oh,
Thank
that's
you
so
so
good.
much.
I just got chills. That's awesome. Yes, well, that's what the Lord wanted to say to you. You got new doors, you got new people coming into your life. Would you be able to end us in prayer?
For sure. In the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen. Holy Spirit, come. Lord, we thank you for this conversation that Yingyee and I have been able to have today. We thank you for all of the listeners, all those fearless women out there, just pursuing you. And we just ask that you keep on leading us closer to your heart. Whatever the next step is for each one of us, that you make it so abundantly clear of how to walk closer towards love this day and every day. And I ask this through your name. Amen.
Amen. If you want to support the Fearless Catholic Woman podcast and this growing ministry, your support truly means so much. In the show notes, I linked our ministry wish list, and any gift goes toward better equipment such as better cameras, better microphones, and better editing software, and also future community and retreat events so more women can connect with each other, grow, and strengthen their relationship with God, and also help them walk in their God-given identity that God created them to be. But the biggest way you can help, completely free, is to rate the podcast, follow, and subscribe. And if you're on YouTube, hit like and leave a comment. This helps push this show out to more women who need this message. With your faithful support, we're able to reach further and touch the lives of millions through our inspiring podcast and ministry. Thank you for watching The Fearless Catholic Woman. I'm Yingyee Herman, and I'll see you next week.